I asked my Instagram followers, what are the sports photography questions that you want me to answer? So I've gathered them all here. I've got 5 minutes on the clock and I'm going to work through as many as I can. Let's get into it. Will you ever have physical workshops? Well, this one's really easy. The answer is yes. I'm definitely going to be doing at least 1 or maybe 2 workshops this year. And in fact, the last workshop that I did, I recorded and I've put together a bit of a mashup of some of the training, which is available. You can go and watch that now. Check the link in my bio or in the description of this video and you'll be able to go and see it. Now, it's worth bearing in mind that there's only so much you can cover in a day at a racetrack. And in terms of value, it's always going to be a lot better to jump inside the Speed of Light Academy where you've got hours and hours of content to go through. But having said that, I know that some people really value the in-person training, so watch out on my social media for when and where those events will be. Use of a monopod, which one and when? Okay, this has actually come in from one of the Academy members. Yes, I do use a monopod. I really like them. It's part of my shooting style now. In my experience, when the lenses get a bit longer, so let's say from about 300mm upwards, 300, 400, 500mm, then I would pretty much always use a monopod. Especially as the lenses are going to get a bit heavier, a bit more bulky, I just find it a lot easier. The reason I use it, well, it takes weight off of my arms and shoulders, it makes it really good for panning, and as the focal length gets a bit longer, what you'll find is just small movements actually have quite a big effect, and therefore having the lens kind of stable and on something means that you're going to get less of that movement in the lens. Now, there is a trend that seems to be occurring within the MotoGP paddock at the moment where lots of photographers are free holding or hand holding their long lenses. Now, these do tend to be the more modern lenses because they're actually a lot lighter than they used to be now. There are some really good advantages to being able to hand hold the lens. The most important one, I think, is that it saves time and you're able to react to things that are happening out on track a lot quicker because you haven't got to suddenly set up your monopod and extend the sections and get it set up and ready. So the downside is definitely speed, but for me, once I'm set up and I'm waiting, it means that I can wait at a lower angle, I can wait at a higher angle, I'm not constantly holding the camera, and when the subject does come along, in my case motorbikes, I'm ready and my shot is all set up. So a few pros and cons for you there, totally down to you. The exact monopod that I use is the Siroi P306. Now trust me, I've used all types of monopods, right from the very expensive to the really cheap. The really expensive one I think I've got in my cupboard back there still. It will never die, it's indestructible, it will survive a nuclear war, but it's just a bit too big and bulky, and overall it was adding a bit too much weight to my setup. Since then I tried some of the cheaper ones, I think around £40 from Manfrotto, and they're okay, you know, they did the job, but I was going through 2 or 3 of them in a season, just because of the amount of abuse that I get to put them through. So this Siri one is more like £70, more of a middle ground, and so far it survived a whole season last season, and I'm hoping it's going to do the same again this season. I'll put the link in the description below. Does Rob like mushy peas? Yes, yes I do. Thank you. What a great question. Really insightful. Sports photographers out there have just had this like epiphany moment. They're now going to go out there and capture all of the best shots and get all of the best clients. Editing and post-processing. What a massive subject. I think inside the Speed of Light Academy I've got at least 5 or 6 separate trainings in there covering editing. So if there's something specific that you want me to go over, then please put it in the comments below and I'll try and include it in the next video. Failing that, I have just recently uploaded a video on, wow, that's the 5-minute timer. All right, we'll park that for now because I still need to get through a number of these and I don't want to leave you feeling like you didn't get any value from this video. So I have just recently uploaded a video to my YouTube covering the tone curve and how you can use it and what those changes will do to your images. So go and check that out if you haven't seen it already. Now, as a general point on editing, I know that there are some people out there that feel like you really shouldn't edit your images too much, like maybe it's cheating somehow. But I actually think it comes down to the use of the photo and maybe if you're sending it to a client, what they're going to use it for. For example, if you're working for a magazine and that magazine is going to go on a shelf, they really need to appeal to as many people as possible because they can't control their audience. They can't necessarily get that magazine in front of the people that are going to want to see it. They've got to attract people just walking around in the shop. Now compare that with social media, it's the complete opposite. You have the algorithms which are literally presenting your content to exactly the person that wants to see it. And in those instances, I think you can be a little bit braver. You can go with a stronger edit. You can have a certain style or brand. Or maybe the client that you're working for actually has their own strong brand online and they want to replicate that. They want to keep that so that they can attract a certain customer. So I actually think that there are some occasions when minimal editing is absolutely fine and occasions where putting a bit more of emphasis and style on the photo is also fine. Focal points. What ones do I use and what's the difference? Okay, so I mainly use the same focal point for about 80% of my work, but I may switch it occasionally. Here I have my Canon R3 and I pretty much will have Spot AF as my #1 focal point. I keep it in this most of the time because it is really fast, it's very accurate, and I like the fact that the box is really small, so you can be very precise with where you're focusing. Now the other one that I do use occasionally is 1-point AF. And the reason I might switch to 1-point AF is if I have a subject which is heading straight towards me or away from me at fast speed, then I quite like to switch to 1-point AF because I feel like it's a little bit faster, and just having that slightly bigger box helps the camera detect the subject when it's going so fast. It's quite a challenging situation for the camera, but I don't normally leave it on that. Like I said before, with the box being a little bit bigger, there is a little danger that you can accidentally start focusing on something next to your subject. You can kind of pick it up by mistake. So I pretty much tend to stick to the smaller AF point. Now, in addition to this, I also use the clever tracking features that come along with a camera like the R3. So if you're interested in seeing a full detailed breakdown of my exact autofocus setup, then maybe I could do a separate video. Let me know in the comments below if there's something that would interest you. Which firmware for panning on the Canon R5? Okay, so I'm not sure if I've understood this one 100% correctly, but in terms of firmware, my general approach would be I try to keep the firmware up to date, but I don't update it on day one. I like to leave it at least a month or so just for them to iron out any kinks with the firmware to make sure there's no issues. Because unless the firmware is addressing a specific issue that you have, then your camera is hopefully working okay and you don't need to rock the boat on day one. So give it a few weeks, make sure it's nice and stable, otherwise keep it up to date. How to get a media pass? Wow, honestly, this question comes up so often and it's a really big topic. Certainly not one that I'm going to be able to cover in a small snippet here. In fact, inside the Speed of Light Academy this year, I am working on a full training program on the business side of photography, and this is one of the big meaty subjects within it. Now, having said all that, I do have very strong opinions about that question in general, because I feel like it's the wrong question to be asking. There seems to be some kind of misconception that in order to have a media pass, then you must be able to take amazing photos, which is completely the wrong way to be looking at it. The media pass signifies that either you run a business, or you're growing a business, or you're providing a service to a client somehow. Now, if you're not doing any of those things, then that's probably what you should be focusing on rather than how do I get the media pass. The media pass is not just for anyone to be able to get really close to the action and take cool shots. So a good way to look at this, let's flip it on its head. I'm going to make you the person in charge of promoting an event. When you're looking at photographers' applications, what are the key things that you're going to look for that's going to help you promote your event? Is it that the photographer's great at panning? Is it that the photographer is really good at color grading and editing? Is it that the photographer has brilliant camera gear, the top of the line, the best lenses and the best cameras? Or is it how many news agencies is the photographer shooting for? Is it how many readers does the magazine have that the photographer's providing images to? Is it what's the potential reach of the photos that this person takes going to be? Ask yourself as the promoter of the event, which one of these is going to get your sport in front of more people? Ultimately, that is what it's all about. The promoters of the event, they want to promote their sport and they want to get it out in front of as many people as possible. And as photographers, we provide a service to the media by capturing those events and providing a professional service. Now, as I said, one of the things that I'm covering inside the Speed of Light Academy this year is the business side of things. Everything from how to attract the clients, how to pitch to them, how to price your work, how to provide that professional service. These are the things that you should be thinking about, not how to get the media pass. If you focus on these business related things, the media pass will come easy. Now, don't get me wrong, if you're already focusing on the business side and you really feel like the media pass is the next step for you, then my advice would be to focus on getting as much of your work published as possible and building up really good relations with your clients. If you've got those things happening, then you're in a good position to apply for a media pass. As I said, this is a really big topic, so keep following the Speed of Light Academy. Watch out for my business related content later in the year. Okay, so I wildly went over the 5-minute limit there. In the next video, I'm gonna get that time down wildly, okay? That is my commitment. Look, I hope this has been helpful. I hope I covered some useful subjects. I still have like a storage bank of more questions, lots of questions still coming through. So I'm happy to do another one of these videos where we round them up and go through them. But if you think of something else and you want it covered, then please put it in the comments below and I'll do my best to include it. Until then, get out and shoot.